Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us for another section of our education series. We're really excited to have Chris Barr with us from Episerver to talk through B2B Commerce with Episerver. My name is Jared Hackbart. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Brilliance. I've been here for about 4.5 years, and as always, I like to keep my intro short because Chris and Lori are far more interesting people than myself. Lori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am excited. This is going to be a great session today. A little bit of background on myself. I started Brilliance a little more than 20 years ago. I went to Purdue in computer electrical engineering and ended up through an internship at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I eventually worked as a flight controller for the space shuttle program, which was super cool and fun. I ended up meeting my husband there. He eventually went to work for Rockwell Automation, and that brought us to Milwaukee. To Rockwell's headquarters through a promotion he had, and I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And that was in 1998, and I decided to start a web development company. 9 years ago, my husband left his job at Rockwell, and now he leads our development team, and we have developed a niche specifically in the B2B e-commerce space. And we've been partnering with Episerver since 2013. And seeing a lot of success in leveraging Episerver for clients. And Episerver made a really interesting acquisition last year of Insite Software, which is now known as B2B Commerce Cloud. And through that process, I've had the opportunity to meet Chris Barr, who's with us today, and really excited about the conversation we're going to have about our shared focus in the B2B commerce space. So Chris, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, Jared, I think you should have started with me. I'm not sure how I follow up that introduction of Lori's, but
I'm glad it's someone else for once. I usually follow Lori in the introductions, and every time they say NASA, I'm like, yep, they don't even know who I am anymore. So I'm glad it's you this time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll keep it short. As Lori mentioned, I started at Insite Software, and I actually started as a BDR, SDR, in that business development standpoint. So the one that was probably hounding your phone and bombarding your inbox with emails. But that gave me a good understanding of kind of being on the front line of some of the thoughts that are happening and trends in manufacturing and distribution. And it gave me the ability to have a closer pulse on what's going on when I transitioned to the account executive role. So now I come from Insite Software, now EpiB2B Commerce, and my experience is all with manufacturing and distribution, which I think is pretty important when you're looking at a very targeted market to understand the needs of your customers and prospects and what they're doing. So hopefully I can share some of that input today and let you know kind of where Epi best fits and some of the takeaways that I've had. We're based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but as you can see with my Cleveland wall background, I am an Ohio native. So it's been a struggle sports-wise, but other than that, gonna stay diehard for them.
Love it. In an earlier session, we had Nadia Johnson with us. She's the founder of the Milky Way Tech Hub and Jet Constellations, and she had brought up this point with us about listening to younger people. And I've had the opportunity to work with Chris now on a few different things, and he brings a lot of really great insight and ideas. So as Lori has mentioned, we're really excited about the conversation with Chris today. What differentiates Episerver B2B Commerce in the manufacturing and distribution space? I'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're looking at B2B commerce for manufacturing and distribution, the thing that's really important to note with our platform is the fact that it's architected for B2B since day one. So you look at a lot of different platforms coming from a CRM or a PEM or B2C background, and then B2B is kind of the afterthought, whereas we've been B2B and B2C was kind of secondary. So when you're laser focused on the space, it allows you to have more built-in native constructs to adhere to these complex business logic that manufacturing and distribution is facing in order to make it so you're able to stand something up quicker, having to do fewer customizations, not having to change that base code for seamless upgrades. So really when you're looking at the native B2B capability, as well as the platform being a SaaS model and agile, it really makes it a great fit And the last thing I would say is when you're looking at our platform, it's all geared towards rule-based configuration. So a lot of times what I've seen with manufacturing and distribution, people don't oftentimes have giant IT infrastructure teams to maintain these things. So they need somebody that's maybe a marketer that isn't able to code, but can still go in and have access to make changes to the site in a CMS and really fully manage the site without having to be in PHP, .NET, or HTML at all.
Yeah, those are great points. One of the things I love about the B2B Commerce Cloud from Episerver is your pre-built data integrations, the fact that you've got so much functionality there. I think a lot of times in this space, organizations aren't even certain what they should be asking for in terms of like what features are best practices. You have so much functionality and capability for companies right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think the one other thing I would add to that is when you're looking at a company that's laser focused like this, you're typically a part of a user group that is in your industry or facing the same challenges. So when we're deriving our roadmap, listening to our customers, it's important to take into consideration when you're evaluating a platform, what users are among the likes of you. Because if they're similar, then you know that the platform is going to continue to be the latest and greatest with the functionalities that you're going to need.
Chris, you were talking about user groups and the importance of seeing other people, in your industry that are giving input to a platform. Tell us more about like who's the ideal candidate for EpiB2B Commerce and why?
Yeah, so ideal candidate-wise, we have customers that range from SMB all the way up to Honeywell's, Toros of the world. So it's a scalable platform that we really strive to be a family home. So it needs to be somebody that's willing to make an investment in a long-term partnership and try to drive some outcomes out of the platform, which, as many people know, might not be an overnight process. But the other thing that I would say with our platform is we invite complexity. The more complex, the better. If you're looking, you're a manufacturer of 50 line items or distributor with 100 line items and no complex pricing or budget approvals needed on your customer end, we're likely not a fit. So the more complex that you have on your back office or customizations written to your ERP typically is the best approach for us to fit in and help fit that mold.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, so often we see companies who are 100-year-old companies, or family-owned, privately held, been around for a long time. These manufacturers, distributors, they've sold classically through sales teams, print catalogs, reps, and trying to figure out what to do with digital. And so there is a lot of complexity inherent in that. Like they're used to having someone that customers talk to and negotiate how that contract is going to be set up. So many times I think in the past, manufacturers and distributors like, well, e-commerce won't work for me. Like we're too special. Like we have certain ways we do things. I think it's that is fabulous that the B2B Commerce Cloud takes that into account and plans for that in advance.
Yeah. So the one thing I would add to that, and I know Jared pointed out me being a younger person, but we had our user conference yesterday, and there was a Forrester analyst that said in the next year, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. So from my standpoint, I'll tell you, I live in an apartment complex that's about 100 yards away from Cub Foods, and you'd be amazed by how many people are still getting their groceries delivered to them via online. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is, this is funny, maybe this might resonate, this might completely mess with some of the people on the call, but there's an episode in The Office where Ryan is kind of that stereotypical millennial, and he's trying to stand up an e-commerce site. And now that you're looking at this, I think that was 2003, 2004, and there's still manufacturers and distributors that are so set on handshakes that when you look at a workforce that's going to be majority millennial base, I hate to say it, but it's going to be a very, very difficult to survive in that type of atmosphere.
Yeah. What tips do you have for how global enterprises can improve their digital experience rapidly?
So when you're looking at global, I think at the end of the day, it's how personalized you can be. If you're a global company, you're probably often serving multiple industries, multiple customer segments. So you need to be able to stand up a site that, if it's localization wise, you got to have multi-metric, multi-currency capability, also multi-language capability, but that can't just be something like Google Translate. There's so many nuances in each language and slang terms that it's just not going to be suffice. So making sure that you have something that supports a translatable capability that is going to be relevant to your customer base is really important. And you're looking at different cultures as well. So there might be different ways that you want to approach and promote towards those companies. You might have multiple brands where you want to have multiple sites that you're trying to tailor and spin up for your customers. And often if you're selling globally, you're going to have some whale customers that you might want to spin up a completely personalized site for them. So the more personalized you can make it, the more you can tailor your approach to the segments that you're serving globally, I think is really important to getting people to improve their digital experience. But the last thing I would say is when you're looking at improving that digital experience, you've got to get people to sell online or to buy online. And if you're a global company, sales internally are the adoption champions. We've got people that will come to us with a very subpar platform that's very bare bones that can get to 20% because they're pushing their sales reps they're incentivizing their sales reps the same way if the purchase is made online and it's still saving time operational efficiency wise. So making sure that your internal team is on board for this prior to just launching something externally is a very pivotal factor.
Definitely. Yeah, that's such a key point. Actually, on the Episerver Ascend user conference, we heard one of the speakers talk about the fact that at their company, they're actually paying sales reps a higher commission for orders online, which is surprising. That was the first time I've heard that. But from the rationale that average order sizes were larger, and the company was seeing efficiencies through orders placed online. And overall, whether it's paying the sales reps more, certainly incentivizing them the same, making sure your sales reps are on board with seeing the value and helping them drive that success for you organizationally.
Yeah, that's just, so one customer of ours is geriatric medical, probably the most mature. They're doing 86% of their business online. And just to speak to your point, Lori, their average order value for an online versus an offline order is 25% higher. So a great point to make. And I'm a data person, so I figured I'd give a little something there.
Nice. Data's great. We love it.
Yeah, you're speaking our language. Clearly, we're biased in the sense that we've seen Episerver leveraged in many impactful ways at Brilliance. I'd love to learn from you some experiences that you've seen Episerver leverage powerfully. Do you have anything you can show us today?
Yeah, so I am a visual person. I will preface I'm not a solution architect or solution consultant, so there's a chance I trip up here, but I'll give it a whirl. All right, well, I'm going to be looking off to the right,
okay,
but that's what we're working with today.
That's good.
So first I want to talk about a lot of companies that we work with will have a separate URL for e-commerce and another for their corporate site. And Epi allows you to consolidate the two in a really strong way. And Van Meter is a great example of somebody that's done this very well. So you can see they're going to have things like featured products, the ability to add to cart right from there. I'm a guest user. They've elected to show list price. Some people, don't want to show that. So maybe a customer that's only getting a 2% discount doesn't want to see that list price. So it's all configurable. But they're also able to do news and updates. They've done training and events as well, where you can register through the corporate site. So that's a little bit on kind of how they've consolidated those two. But I do want to touch on, Lori, I heard you say Rockwell, our search. And this is another idea of the complexity. You've got so many SKUs that our philosophy is index everything. So for Rockwell, and I'll just point out, maybe I forget the K, you're still going to get all this Rockwell details from a category, content, and brand perspective. Now, if I type it in with the K, you'll pull up some of the content as well. Some of the products they will allow you to add to cart. But this is just a really good example of something that you're able to index and boil down. And even when you submit the search itself, which I guess I'm not doing right.
You know how to go. It's always on a demo.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Of all times now. So you can not only sort by the products and see if you want to show the exact unit available in stock through your ERP in a real-time call, you can. But I just really like the fact that they're able to show products and all related content. So that'd be one example of how I've seen it really powerfully leveraged. Another example is a customer of ours, Morsco, and they've done a really nice job of maintaining a multi-brand, multi-site approach. So they've got 9 different brands that they're pushing, and they've actually spun up all 9 sites and they manage those from a single instance of our platform. So you're looking at Morsco HVAC Supply, and you can see all of this is pretty consistent. They've kind of just copied a site and changed the branding. But even for Farnsworth, after 6 months, they had 10% adoption going through the site, and after 1 year, they had 23% overall revenue through the Farnsworth division itself. Another one that I want to show, and so these first 2 are distributors, and these next 2, Brady and Buyers Products, are manufacturers. When you're looking at manufacturing, some people don't want to disrupt the channel. You know, they don't want to go direct to consumer, but in this case for Brady, at least, I'll click on a product here. They do enable guest checkout for you. So some manufacturers are more equipped to go direct to consumer, but for somebody like Buyers Products, they're very careful with their with disrupting their channels. So they're going to do something more towards, instead of saying, hey, you can check this out here, they're going to point you to a where to buy through the site. And I might not be picking here we go. So they'll point you to where to buy, but I know that they're working to identify, you know, some spare parts products, some products that won't disrupt the channel. So they'll be able to sell those direct through the site. And the last thing I'll show you, and then we can move on here, is they've got a really powerful configurator. And this is something where, you know, they're doing snow plows. So here you're able to, you can see all the different brands of snow plows, but now you can drill in and say, I've got a 2011, it's probably going to need to be like a Toyota Tacoma, and then you got to drill in, you know, what's your cab size, what's your engine size, and you can submit this, and it's only going to produce you, it's only going to produce you compatible plows. Well, for this one, all of them are compatible, but you'll have to take my word if I put some other things in, these wouldn't all just be compatible here.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, no, I just forgot to hit submit. So for this instance of this truck, this is the only plow that is compatible with that truck. So that's a little bit of how I've seen it leveraged really powerfully. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Those are really great examples, and I love, I mean, there's so many things there in what you shared, but the combining content and commerce together, I think, is something that I always look for in terms of manufacturers and distributors that are leaders in digital, because that really is a way to create relationships and to demonstrate subject matter expertise.
So demonstrating return on investment has always been something that's important to leadership when they're making a decision to pull the trigger on an e-commerce solution. But even more so now with COVID, we're seeing organizations that are being a little bit more careful with that decision, wanting to invest in e-commerce, but also knowing that they want to make sure that they're going to see that ROI. Do you have any tips for, you know, how you can shorten project timeframes and enable companies to start seeing that return more quickly?
Yeah, well, so one thing I would say in a time like this, we have one customer that actually had to shut down an entire warehouse and manufacturing plant on the day that they came on board with Episerver. So they really realized the essential factor of having e-commerce in place. And one thing that we often see is maybe it's somebody that wants to re-platform and change their ERP, which, as you probably know, is, you know, 1.5 to 3 year process with the evaluation in place. So they're not able to get that return on investment quickly. So I will say that we have some customers that are more mature. They've probably been selling online 5 to 6 years and maybe outgrown the solution. So some customers we've had launch 3 different sites all on the same day. And they'll do every single phase 1 must-have that they want built into the site possible. Others will take more of an MVP approach, which, you know, and I think that that's probably the best way to try to not boil the ocean all at once. But the MVP approach is going to allow you to not have to do as many customizations, stand it up quicker, And oftentimes from a services perspective, an MVP approach is also going to be more cost efficient. And this really just, again, to echo the point, sales, if your sales and internal team isn't adopting, you're not going to get the ROI as quickly as you expect.
Yeah, those are all really great points. And your point about an MVP approach is something that we frequently talk to customers about. I think it's natural for companies when they start to think about digital commerce, they get teams together that brainstorm this big list of things that they want to be true. They've been waiting so long to do this. And if companies try and deploy all of that functionality day one, it can really lengthen the amount of time a project takes potentially. And like better to get something out there and start making money off of it and then make it better over time. And the idea of having like a roadmap and releasing new functionality as you go, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. So I guess, Lori, with your user base, what would you say is the more common approach that you've seen taken?
It's a great question. The reality is that we talk to people about MVPs, and companies like it in concept, but then there's often things that they're like, oh, but we need to have these things, which really often are more than really what I would define to be the minimum. It can be challenging though, especially to your point, Chris, if they're coming from an existing digital commerce solution, you don't want to remove any functionality that you currently have. So, you don't want to take things away from people. So I think the times when it's easiest for people to take an MVP approach, I think, are when they don't have digital commerce currently, and it's in addition to what they already have. But still, I think much of that comes back to selling it internally, selling the idea of why it's valuable to start small internally. And helping everyone understand that this is going to be an ongoing effort, not just like a one and done project. So what technology advances are available on the market that enable companies to better compete with Amazon and other digital giants?
So technology advances wise, I think, the AI machine learning, Amazon is going to be able to do all that. When you're looking at manufacturing and distribution, many of these companies are not going to be the cheapest. They might not price match Amazon, but where they really succeed is making the customer service and enabling your customers to have tools online, like to manage their budget approvals, to manage their user roles, to have access to training and events and news and updates. Those are all kind of intangibles that somebody like Amazon isn't going to be as focused on providing that customer base. So I think that's really where the service differentiation within our customer base is where, from a technology standpoint, it might not be keeping up to par with Amazon's technology, but it's more so having things in place that are going to make your customers do business with you as opposed to them.
Yeah, those are great points. I can't tell you the number of times that we get on calls with people, Jerry, you've heard this, where they're like, oh, we don't need anything that much. We just want a site like Amazon. And we're like, yeah. Okay, do you know how much Amazon spends on their, so to match that technology, it's a really big ask. And I think, but the cool thing is that for many of these manufacturers and distributors, they have something Amazon doesn't, which is those relationships with their customers and their knowledge, their subject matter expertise. And so those tools you're talking about, that make it easier for customers to do business with them, those are ways of reinforcing that relationship, the use of content to demonstrate that, to give the customers helpful information. Those are ways to really compete with Amazon in a way that isn't purely, it's not purely technology, it's using the technology to play to your strengths. And then also, other things like AI can make it even more powerful, but yeah.
Yeah, it's usually, Lori, we've got $20,000. Can we get our Amazon site built tomorrow, please?
Yes, right. That's what it usually is. Yes.
In all your experience working in the digital commerce space, what stands out to you about Episerver?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we've been doing this work for 20-ish years, and when we originally chose Episerver in 2013, it was because we were looking for a platform that was really enabled content and commerce together. And our focus has always really been oriented around the manufacturing and distribution space and the idea of a low total cost of ownership. And I think with Episerver's acquisition of Insite in December of last year, which is now the B2B Commerce Cloud, it's made that even more powerful from the standpoint that the challenge that classically existed on an Episerver implementation in B2B is that their Episerver enables a low total cost of ownership through a framework that really is a blank slate. And we have some ways at Brilliance that we worked to make that more efficient. But there typically is a lot of labor up front in terms of those project builds. And so Insite, now B2B Commerce Cloud, comes to the table with so much functionality that has really been a product of you listening to your customers and users and in terms of what they need and enabling that to be very powerful. I also, as I mentioned before, I love the fact that the data integration framework that exists for B2B Commerce Cloud, data integration can often be a big part of getting customers live in digital commerce. So in some ways, it just seems like a really great pairing of, Episerver has some really strong content, AI, global focus, has classically had that, and are making smart investments and Insight in their focus really around B2B functionality. It's a really strong offering.
We're seeing a lot of organizations, as we mentioned above, starting to look at investing into Episerver, and a lot of them are on first generation platforms. Can you speak to what you're seeing as far as why people are leaving those first generation platforms for Episerver?
Yeah, absolutely. So first generation platforms, this could be a bolt-on ERP solution. And when you're looking at a bolt-on, if you're buying an e-commerce platform from an ERP provider, that's a red flag, I think. That's something where they're going to be focused on first their ERP and making upgrades there. So when you're looking at any platform, I would make sure you know when the last update is. I would make sure you understand the roadmap very thoroughly. A lot of times we'll see people that have 1-2% adoption that are coming through the platform because the front end experience just isn't friendly. A lot of that can be around search. If somebody's a first time visitor, you just launched your site, they're typing in a manufacturer or SKU number that they're used to having in their verbiage and they can't find it, they're probably not going to return to the site again. So making sure you have all of that fine tuned and making sure that that's in place is very important. And then making sure that you're not just looking to provide a transactional site. That doesn't cut it today. It needs to be personalized. It needs to be tailored to your customer base. And if you're not doing that effectively, then you're in trouble. And the last thing I would say from a first generation platform is I've heard a lot of times customer service, the lack of ability to make edits to the site in a CMS and always having to reach out, which kind of makes you butt heads with that customer service, and lack of delivery assurance and delivering things on time, even with, SLAs in place that I've had a customer measure, here's your SLA, here's your actual time it took you to provide the remedy, and it's just head over heels way out of this different ballparks. So those are some of the things that I would say. Are there anything that you would add to that, Jared and Lori?
Well, you referenced it, Chris, but the idea of agility is one of the reasons that I really love Episerver and the B2B Commerce Cloud, that idea of being able to test and measure new things. And ideally, for many of the things, you don't have to get your technical team involved. And I think to your point, for many teams, for many companies that are leaving a first generation platform, that's something that they haven't experienced, is the idea that you can be rolling out new things really quickly and trying testing, finding out what customers think, and just continuous improvements.
So Chris, for smaller organizations who are looking to take advantage of this type of technology, particularly distributors and manufacturers, can you talk about how Insite Online can help?
Yeah, so we've got Insite Commerce, Episerver B2B Commerce, and then Insite Online is an offering that we have where we allow, and I know I've mentioned that we had that 93% fully supported with a very large customer, multi-billion, and this is something where able to provide a cost-efficient solution that 9 times out of 10 is going to do some and more of what you're looking for in a platform, to get you in the door with a platform for a long-term solution. And it's as simple as turning on some of these other capabilities that maybe aren't included in that license. So it's a way to stand something up fast, save money, and be with a platform that you can grow into long-term. That's really the idea behind it, and where we see it, best played. Usually it's in the small, sub $50 million type companies, but we're really excited about being able to give people access to an enterprise strength platform, at a much more lower price point.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
If I want to sneak in one thing for anyone that's going to be doing evaluations, I would say a lot of times we've seen that people will be yes/no people, and they'll say yes to everything. So if you're looking at platforms, I would say make them show you, and make them show you in a demo environment, not on a customized customer site.
I think that's a great point. We've
that
seen
is
it
a really good
time and
point.
time again, where they go down that other path, and it leads to misrepresentation at the end of the day. Thank you, Chris, for taking time out of your very busy day. We really appreciate it. If you're interested in connecting with Chris to learn more about either himself or Episerver B2B, feel free to reach out to myself, and we can put you in contact with him. Once again, thank you, Chris, for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.